I think I'm gonna talk to Mike when he comes back from vacation tomorrow. We're gonna do a really fun poster. We're gonna get some headshots.
Good.
It's gonna be a good time. But let's bring in Aditi.
Aditi Kinkhabwala with us now from CBS, of course. She's with us every week. Aditi, how are you?
I'm great. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. Looking
Same
forward
to
to the
you.
new year.
Did
Turn
you have
the
a
page
nice?
on.
Have you thawed out from being on the field?
I'll give you credit for that. I give you credit for
Okay,
that.
so let me at least say this.
Yeah.
The Browns organization is just as classy as could be. I am technically not allowed to go inside the bench area. I totally, when the players weren't there, was whatever the word is, sponging off of their heaters. Brad Mellon, the Browns equipment manager, gave me extra warmers. He put this crazy cayenne pepper baby powder mix inside my shoes, which I think I told you guys last week. I was most worried about my toes. My toes were fine. He gave me extra hand warmers. Andrew Berry, general manager Andrew Berry, beforehand had said, hey, are you good? Are you all right? If you need anything, don't hesitate. So I really, really, really appreciate that they're cared about everybody on that field, not just their
When
players.
when you got home and you took your boots off, did your feet smell like barbecue?
No, I can smell anything because my nose was frozen. Everything was frozen. My entire body.
How does that work? Cayenne pepper and baby powder. How did that work?
Who came up with that?
Yeah, who was trying different spices until something hit?
Yeah, but you know what's so funny? Now I'm suddenly people keep tweeting at me paprika. So I don't know if in my first live shot I actually said paprika and baby powder instead of cayenne pepper and baby powder. But now I'm like all confused. But it's basically just a hot red spice, and I guess something activates it, like your feet activate it somehow.
Can't you go back and watch it? You didn't DVR the game?
Would you want to rewatch that game?
Ooh.
No, but you could go back and just watch your first report and see what you said.
I could. You know what? I could, except the truth is that I drove home that night. I had to clean my house, wrap Christmas presents, and the next morning was obviously the Christmas, and then I had to cook for my husband's family and my parents, my brother, my sister-in-law, my niece and nephew, all come in from New Jersey. They're all here right now, so it's kind of been a complete madhouse, and I'm sort of looking forward to my game this weekend. As opposed to,
Gesundheit. All I'm hearing is a bunch of excuses for why to not watch that Browns game again.
Are they all staying in your house?
Yes, correct.
Put them on camera.
You see, that's the my in-laws now. When they come, they stay nearby, not in the house.
She has the estate. The estate is fully lodged.
I guess I don't have as fancy a house.
No, not that. My son is sleeping on an air mattress in my third room and with his cousin and whining.
That's fun.
It's cold. Yeah, and then so yesterday I gave him more blankets and he said, well, now it was too hot, and it's really just looking for excuses, basically.
The sun.
He's had enough of the holidays at this point.
The son always gets a raw deal, though. We do always get the worst bed.
That's true.
We're just like I would have
Suck
I'd have to sleep sitting up in a wooden bedroom or dining room chair sometimes.
I'm gonna ask you this. I gotta talk about this because this hurt my heart. I did not in a million years think that the Pittsburgh Steelers this year would have a better record than the Cleveland Browns.
They better not finish over 500. I'm gonna be so pissed.
How is this possible, Aditi? How?
It's a story of football. Look, this is who the Steelers are. This is who the Steelers have been under Mike Tomlin for the last 10 years. They're always competitive. They're always in it at the end of a season. I mean, even the Duck Hodges year, even the year that Ben Roethlisberger blew out his elbow. And if you're in Pittsburgh, your frustration is that, okay, well, you have 3 playoff wins in 12 years. Who cares if you're competitive? Go and win something. But that is part of why the Pittsburgh Steelers are one of those milestone organizations, is that they're always in it. And there are pieces and they come up with I really do believe. And I'll use the Jaguars as an example because I saw the Jaguars earlier this season. I had them weeks 4, week 5. I had them again a few weeks ago when they won finally, and I have them this weekend. And a young organization, the Lions, I had the Lions, it's the same thing. A young organization needs to learn how to win, needs to learn how to get out a win at the end of the day, at the end of the game, needs to know how to pull in that pass that seemingly can't be pulled in or to catch the routine pass. Hint, hint, hint. It's your job. Do your job. The best organizations and more veteran organizations figure out how to gut out those plays in the last few minutes, no matter how cold it is, no matter how tough it is, no matter how done you may seem to be. You get big plays from big players. A team like the Jaguars couldn't do that earlier. They couldn't figure out how to do it. A team like the Lions didn't know how to do it. I know I've quoted this on the show. I remember saying to Dan Campbell, how do you teach young players how to win close games? And he said, you know what Bill Parcells used to say? The way you learn how to win close games is by winning close games. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, for decades now, it is just their organizational ethos. They will always have someone who comes up with a big play, and they know what it is to get guys like that. A guy like a Kenny Pickett, he's a gamer. He's never giving up. He's not going to give you the big throw every single game, but you can count on him in moments. And so I think that that's just it. The Steelers know how to do that. The Steelers have figured out how to do that. A lot of that has to do with Mike Tomlin having done it for as long as he's done it. And unfortunately, the Browns on Saturday couldn't get some big plays. And it's hard. Look, like, let's be honest, catching a football when it's minus 15 degrees, when the wind is doing all these crazy things. I mean, we saw so many incomplete passes that were truly beautifully thrown balls that either bounced off of somebody's hands or at the last second the wind took it in a different direction, all those things. But you want Amari Cooper to make a catch. You want David Njoku to make a catch. And they may not seem like they are huge circus type catches, but they are huge catches, and you need those. And you see that sometimes. David Njoku made one a few weeks ago, and it was huge. But the best organizations consistently come up with plays like that.
Yeah, I thought Njoku played his worst game of the year. He's had a really good year. I thought he was terrible this game. I know the weather was a factor, but that drop, of all those three big drops, I thought that was the easiest play of the three. It was brutal. And it was the worst one.
You know what? It was brutal, but it was brutal for everybody. It was brutal for the guy throwing the ball who's never played in temperatures like that. It was brutal for the entire Saints team that plays in a dome and has never, as an organization, ever done anything even remotely like that. I mean, at some point, you're all playing in the same conditions. Someone is coming up with a play.
That's right. You got to make a play. The Saints made more plays, which is embarrassing for the Browns. You know, it's interesting, the perspective from the fans, right? Like Steeler fans, and I don't blame them, are ticked that they've been essentially a mediocre team for the last decade. They've not been terrible. Whereas, like, Browns fans, a lot of Browns fans are like, we can't trade Baker. He won one playoff game. Whereas Steelers fans would never think that way because they've been a winning organization. And so your thoughts as a fan, thinking back as a Bengals fan, like, when I was a kid, they were pretty good, and then they sucked forever. And then when Marvin Lewis came there, they would go to the playoffs all the time and always lose in the first round. And initially, I was excited that they were in the playoffs a lot. Mm-hmm. But then I was like, well, they keep losing, so we got to move on and get someone else. The more you're used to winning as a fan or a team, whatever, the higher your expectations go. Your expectations never stay the same. So I understand where Steeler fans come from, even though I think Mike Tomlin is a really good coach. I get it that they're frustrated.
Well, and there's a cumulative effect to that, right? Like, I remember that Bengals year when they were 8-0 at home, and I think it was 2013. You'd probably know better than me. I think they were 8-0 at home, and then San Diego comes in there and upsets them in the first round of the playoffs with Eric Weddle. Yeah. And it was sort of like, okay, but it was a great year, and Andy Dalton and AJ Green, and we've got these young players in Gio Bernard, and I think that's when Ben Jarvis Green Ellis was the other running back. Yep. But then the next year they're losing in Houston. And I could be getting this wrong.
But remember, Yates. T.J. Yates was the Texans quarterback when they lost.
Yeah, and it was just sort of like after a certain period of time, it's just not good enough to get in the playoffs. Right. And so the Steelers early on, when they had the killer bees, when they had Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown and Ben Roethlisberger and Chris Boswell, and you're like, oh, they're good. Okay, but like each progressive year, you lose in the first round, then you lose in the second round, then you get to the AFC title game. Okay, but now what? And so it's crazy when people want to constantly make change because that's not necessarily the right answer. But tweaks sometimes are. So when people in Pittsburgh say, well, Mike Tomlin is done, they're not listening to Mike Tomlin. It's so ridiculous. Who do you think you're getting that's better than Mike Tomlin? Mike Tomlin is one of the top 5 coaches in the NFL. Mike Tomlin is temperamentally so perfectly suited for this city, for this organization, for this club. Mike Tomlin is going to be the head coach in Pittsburgh until he doesn't want to be anymore. But does that not mean that Mike Tomlin could maybe tweak his staff a little bit?
Definitely. Yeah.
So it's things like that you kind of have to look at. And I'm also not sitting here and saying that
some tweaks are coming.
Kevin Stefanski needs to tweak his staff. This was a very odd year for a million different reasons. But there are certain things. Every great team does some level of self-evaluation. Every great sideline reporter would go back and check her hits. I haven't, clearly, but I will before my next game, I promise. You have to do an evaluation of yourself and really be fair and honest in that assessment, as opposed to just thinking, okay, doing the same thing over and over again is going to get us a different result.
And speaking of which, the Browns, we think, need to tweak their coaching staff. I mean, I think it's time for both Prefer and Joe Woods to go. What say you, Aditi?
I have a hard time with. I don't think that. So coaching is about coaching. It's about developing. Do you see your players getting better? Are they actually teaching?
I don't.
Okay, but now that's not as much on the coordinator as it is on the position coaches. Okay, it's about the position coaches and the type of teaching that they're doing. You know, Kevin Stefanski told us a funny story this week. I had asked Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson had been very sort of open a few weeks ago, talking about this half an hour film breakdown that he did with Kevin Stefanski when they were talking football before he decided to go to Cleveland, and just how much he really connected with him on a football IQ level. So then I said to him, okay, now that you've had the 3 weeks of actually working with him in game situations, is there anything about Kevin that kind of surprises you or is different or notable? And he said, well, frankly, I'm surprised at how much time he spends with us. You know, like he just kind of assumed maybe he'd be the head coach and then call the plays. But Kevin's actually in there in the room a lot and really having the conversations with AVP, with Chubb, with the quarterback's coach, all of that. So anyway, so then I went back to Kevin and I said, well, you know, Deshaun said he was actually surprised that you devote as much time to him and the offense as you do. And Kevin said, well, I remember when I first became a coordinator, I thought it was kind of lonely. It was like, well, what do I do? Like, who do I stand with? I miss doing individual drills. And it's the same way as being a head coach. And so that is the nature of being a coordinator. You're not necessarily running drills. It's the position coaches that are running drills. Now, I don't want to call anybody out, but I have been around clubs where a coordinator who was once a position coach, then became the coordinator, had to take over for a position coach for some reason or other. And suddenly that position group played better that week because the coordinator was a great teacher and the position coach wasn't necessarily. So I'm taking a long way of saying this, but Joe Woods is not necessarily responsible if the players themselves are not getting better, because he's not the one that is charged with teaching them technique or hand placement or how to watch film. What is on Joe Woods is the scheme that he sets up. But here's the thing. Joe Woods asked a lot of his players earlier. There were a lot of injuries. There were guys coming in and out. They couldn't necessarily do everything. So Joe Woods, credit to him, didn't keep saying, well, no, my way, this is the way I want to do it. He said, okay, you know what? We need to simplify everything. I need to pare down the play menu. I don't care if we do half as much. I don't care if we do a third as much, but we just need to do what we do really well. And I'm going to let the guys that I have play as fast, as free as possible. And then over the course of the last month, how much better has that defense been? That is a credit to Joe Woods. It's Joe Woods' responsibility to run the defense, to create the scheme, to design what they're doing. It's the position coach's responsibility to make sure that those players are coached up, are developing, are getting better, are watching film in the way they need to watch film. So I think it's very, very easy to sit here and say, okay, it's the head coach. Okay, it's the coordinator. Okay, it's the GM. And to some degree, yes, the buck has to stop somewhere. But I think that we need to really think about who's doing what on a football coaching staff.
Hey, Aditi, if we could just take it back.
Okay, that just dropped dead. See, this is what happens.
No, not at all. Not at all. That's true. I wanted to ask you this question when we were talking about Pittsburgh. I just didn't get to, and I actually want to take it back to Pittsburgh because thinking about the state of my own team right now is just devastatingly depressing, so I just don't want to think about it. So, back to Pittsburgh for a second. I'm hoping to hear some bad news here, so don't do me wrong. How does the fan base feel about what they're getting at quarterback out of Kenny Pickett? Do they think that he's the future? Are they settled on him? Are they excited about him? My dream scenario, obviously, is that he is one of those tweener quarterbacks where they don't know if he's good and they get moored with him for like 4 or 5 seasons before finally deciding to move on. That would be amazing. Please tell me that's going to be the situation.
I'm sorry. I can't lie to you as much as I wish I could, but I think that, this is where fans are fickle. Early, I can't remember if it was his first 3 games or 4 games, Kenny had 8 interceptions. But if you actually looked at the interceptions, only 2 of the 8 were really actually on him. 1 was in his first game. It was a dumb rookie move. And then another was he just didn't see a guy. The other 6 were all somebody else running the wrong route or making the wrong, making the wrong conversion, whatever. So fans were ready to move on from him. And people were saying, well, if the Steelers have a high draft pick, they have to take a quarterback. And the Steelers this, that, and the other, and all that. It was making me nuts because obviously there are so many examples of guys that were allegedly busts, see Jalen Hurts, who all of a sudden are MVP candidates the very next year. Coaching, development, who's around you, all of that matters. Kenny has played tremendously well recently, engineering a comeback like he did Saturday night. That just proves the gamer he is, the moxie that he has, all the intangible personality traits that Mike Tomlin loves. He's only going to get better. And I think Kenny's got a great quarterbacks coach in Mike Sullivan. I would like to see him have a better offense to play in.
I hear it.
But
we know what you're saying.
Yes, I don't know that I'm not ready to say, oh, Kenny Pickett is the next coming, but I don't really know who is. We thought Justin Herbert was the next big superstar, but offensively, what's going on there? What are they doing? What's their philosophy? What are the pieces around him? It's again, we try to think that one player and one player alone changes the fortunes of a franchise, but it just
we're counting on that, actually.
I actually think
that's the whole game plan.
I think Kenny Pickett's going to be a mid-tier quarterback. He'll be good enough to be a starter, but not great, and I don't think that's terrible.
That's good.
But we'll see, Aditi. You think he's going to be better?
I hope he's a little worse than that. I hope he's like sub Andy Dalton.
Yeah, but I think so much has to do what's around you.
Sure.
Do I think Kenny Pickett is Joe Burrow, who picks up everybody around him, makes everybody around him better? I'm not sure yet. It's still early. I don't know that I'm ready to anoint him as such, but I don't think that Kenny Pickett is the reason you lose games. I don't. And I think in the National Football League, if you've got great offensive talent, if you've got great skill players, it all starts with the lines. Let's talk about that first. If you've got a great offensive line, and if you play great defense, then you're right, Adam. I don't think you need a quarterback who's the number 1 or number 2 quarterback in the all-time history of the world.
See, Aditi, I want to dig. I want to get back to the Browns because I don't think Stefanski and Barry and Haslam understand something, right? So as we sit here, you've been witness to I don't know how many Super Bowls the Steelers got.
Ask any Steelers fan, they'll tell you.
6.
They've won 6.
They got 6 Super Bowls, right? So when
one for the thumb.
So when they fans say, "Oh, we only got 3 playoff wins in 12 years," we on a different level. I tell Bull all the time, you don't understand. You done got your team go to the Super Bowl 3 times. We ain't sniffed. We ain't even. I know people that would cry just to see the Browns in a Super Bowl. And for us, the patient word is just so. It's because what we're looking at is we've been
because
patient.
you had the taste. Gee, the problem is that 2 years ago you were 2 plays away from upsetting the Kansas City Chiefs and going to the AFC title game, so it just feels, how can that happen in such a short period of time? And we know how it can happen. We can run through all the reasons of why it happened. But I think that when you're bad and you're bad and you're bad and you're bad, you're just sort of like, okay, whatever. But then you get that sniff and you're almost there and you can totally taste it. You're expecting the next year to get better. And
Well, no,
that's what a mark of a good team is consistency.
I will say this. That wasn't a sniff to us. A sniff for us is, so when our fans, and we look at our culture, right? Every year, our culture for Cleveland is we have to wait until we waited for Andy Dalton to not be good. We waited for Joe Flacco to not be good. We waited for Ben Roethlisberger to not be good or be gone. All three of those guys are gone, and the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Ravens have retooled. Mm-hmm. They've retooled and gotten Burrow and Lamar Jackson and Kenny Pickett. So when is the culture for the Cleveland Browns going to be able to say, we understand what those other teams are doing, and we are going to be competitive year in and year out with those teams?
They get it. The club gets it. That's for sure. I think that's why you saw them do everything that they did to get Deshaun Watson, because they recognize how important that one position is. I just think you need it elsewhere. You need it throughout the organization. This is the conversation that we all had last week about Jarvis Landry and certain players that bring a certain intangible quality, certain guys that you can rely on to make that gutty big play in that gutty moment. And so, again, the pieces are there. I think what's important now is for Browns fans to feel good about how the season ends. You want this team to end the right way, go into the offseason the right note, have guys committed this offseason to making things, to saying, okay, we squandered something, but we're not going to again. And, this entire offense basically is locked up. Who's a free agent on this offense? The center? Is that it? Ethan Pochik?
Yeah. Kareem Hunt.
Everybody's locked up. They're all back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kareem Hunt, Ethan Pochik.
Yeah.
That's it.
Jadeveon Clowney's gone, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, well, she's talking about offense, but I think Aditi, one of the things I think is what I think from an outside perspective. I'm not in the locker room. My perspective, when I look at the AFC North, is the Bengals, the Ravens, and the Steelers. And I don't really personally think the Steelers are in any better shape than the Browns. Obviously, the Bengals and Ravens at the moment are ahead because they have more sure thing at quarterback. Watson should be there. We'll see. But the Ravens, Bengals, and Steelers, and the Bengals didn't always have this, obviously. Now they do. They got some killers on that team.
Yeah.
Right? They got some guys that just grab the rest of the team and say, let's freaking go.
Yeah.
And for the Bengals, Joe Burrow is that kind of player. Obviously, on defense, they got Sam Hubbard. They got Mike Hilton. They've got guys like that. We know the Steelers who got their guys. The Ravens have those guys. The Browns don't have those guys. Their best players, Myles Garrett, Joe Bitonio, those guys are not those type of guys. No. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. Although, what's funny is that Deshaun Watson was telling me that Nick Chubb is actually talking more in the huddle than he expected him to. Yeah, and then I asked Joel Bitonio about that. I said, what's that? And he said, no, actually, Nick is starting to get a little bit more assertive, and you want to see that. This is something. It's funny because I'll go back to the Jaguars just because I'm thinking about Doug Peterson telling me this. Doug Peterson said he thinks it's about kind of this generation of players. And I think it's why we call a guy like a TJ Watt a throwback, in the sense that there are definitely Steelers players that are afraid of TJ Watt. I mean, he's as nice as can be Monday through Saturday. But on Sunday, you do not want to be not bringing your A game. You do not want to get in TJ Watt's crosshairs. You ever see Myles Garrett look like he's going to smack somebody in the head?
No.
It's just not his nature.
Well, one time.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That was great.
Well timed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Doug Peterson was saying this about Trevor Lawrence, because Trevor Lawrence, when the Jaguars were struggling earlier and couldn't figure out how to kind of gut out these games, Trevor Lawrence is a guy that has never faced adversity in his entire football playing career. Take out last year with Urban Meyer, which was just, a freak show all around. But in high school, he was a champion. In college, he was a champion. He just had never been that guy that had to yell at players, that had to get a little nasty, that had to drive people. And I remember Travis Etienne, who was his college teammate, telling me, Trevor needs to get that in him. And he was watching The Last Dance and how Michael Jordan, kind of would get angry at his teammates, and his teammates didn't want to disappoint him. So Etienne was saying he needs that out of Trevor Lawrence. Doug Peterson was saying, if you really look across the league at this generation's star players, a lot of guys fall in that category of not necessarily having that dog, having that nasty, having that Michael Jordan. I mean, Michael Jordan would beat up Scottie Pippen if he needed to. Name a guy on the Browns that you feel has got that in him.
Nobody.
And I think you're really picking up on something there because the Ravens have that nasty. I mean, whether it comes from John Harbaugh or not that Lamar Jackson is that, but organizationally, there's always someone there that's ready to kind of knock heads. Yeah. The Steelers certainly have that in TJ Watt. The Browns, I don't know. I've been saying this to you for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. Yeah. Myles Garrett, come on. I want something more out of you. But if he's not institutionally that person, what do you do? So maybe Nick Chubb.
When we're vetting who we're picking with our second round pick, we should look for people with assault charges.
Yeah, we need some criminals.
What do you guys think?
It's just winning has to matter more than anything. Yeah. Okay, and again, this is not a knock on Myles Garrett. I really, really, truly do believe that Myles Garrett loves the game of football and that Myles Garrett really, really wants to be in the Hall of Fame, that he wants to go down as one of the greatest ever. I think he's driven to be the best at whatever he does. But another story we heard about Myles Garrett is that when he was at Texas A&M, the whole entire team, Kyle Allen told us this, the whole entire team would go to a movie together on Friday night, and Myles Garrett would sit outside the movie theater reading a book. And we asked Myles about it, and he said, he'd be reading Jules Verne, he'd be doing something. Okay, sometimes it's not fun to go watch the movie, but that's just part of team building. That's just part of being the team. That's just part of the bonding. I don't know. Again, not a knock on Myles. He has to be who he is. Maybe we shouldn't be looking to Myles to be that guy.
Right.
Maybe there's somebody else that needs to step up to be that guy. Maybe Deshaun is that guy, and it's been hard to do that this year because of all the circumstances. Maybe next year he'll be that guy.
Maybe we could get that from a coach or two. I remember James Harrison knocking Mohamed Massaquoi out cold. I remember him knocking Colt McCoy. They got Colt McCoy too.
Well, the punter, Antonio Brown kicked the punter in the head.
See, this is what I'm talking about.
We need to kick some punters in the head.
Listen, but this is the whole idea, Jay. This is what competitiveness is. This is the conversation I had with John Harbaugh about. This is years ago. We were talking about coaches who it was John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin, and I had kind of grown up on Tom Coughlin and Andy Reid. Bitter rivals, but a ton of respect for each other and genuine affection for each other. And I remember one year Andy Reid was really struggling. Tom Coughlin had said something really wonderful about Andy Reid. I had repeated it back to Andy Reid, and Andy Reid legitimately choked up. Legitimately started, tears welled in his eyes, and he said, Tom Coughlin is a good man. And I remember telling John Harbaugh this story because I didn't think that he and Mike Tomlin had that, and they don't have that. So I had said to John Harbaugh, that existed. You don't have that. And he goes, no, I don't think that's in the league right now. He's like, we pretty much all hate each other. And his brother was coaching the 49ers. And I said, well, what about Jim? He's like, yeah, when he's on the other sideline, I hate him too.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of that nasty that you can be friends with each other off the field. You can be friends when it's over and sign each other's jerseys. But on the field, if Antonio Brown's mother was in his way, he was running over his mother to get to the end zone.
Well, we know that.
We've seen his work.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not the best example right now, but point being, it goes back to, since we're at Christmas, let's talk about that play. That's stupid, not stupid, but the Immaculate Extension, when Ben Roethlisberger throws, no time on the clock, Ben Roethlisberger throws short of the end zone to Antonio Brown. It's for the division title. It's to go to the playoffs. It's against your bitter rival Ravens. 3 guys are in position to Antonio Brown, and he's able to extend over the goal line. The only reason Ben Roethlisberger throws short of the goal line to Antonio Brown is because he knows Antonio Brown's going to do whatever the heck he needs to do to get in the end zone. Tell me who Deshaun Watson feels that way about right now on the Cleveland Browns.
No, it's fair. Yeah. It's all fair, Aditi. We'll see you before the end of the week, right? You're back on Thursday?
Yes, I would love to be.
Okay, with the final show before the new year.
Great job this past weekend, Aditi.
We'll see you later.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Talk to you soon.